Has Fujifilm really killed their affordable rangefinder style camera line? The Fujifilm XE line is the perfect camera line for people beginning their photography journey, might that be with street, travel or so many other kinds of photography. It combines a sleek camera body with tactile function buttons and dials to be able to experience shooting with your camera in manual mode to properly learn what each and every setting actually does. But the XE4 was discontinued in early 2023 while barely being a 2-year-old camera, which came to a lot of people's surprise. There have been reports that this was due to similar or even the same parts being used for the XE4 and the X100V, and Fujifilm just prioritizing back orders on the X100V. Also, a regional manager in France actually mentioned in an interview that the XT100 line as well as the XE line might be abandoned, but didn't say it outright. Instead, he somewhat tiptoed around that subject, probably so Fujifilm can reserve the right to create an XE5 if they choose to do so. So the question remains, will there be a new iteration of the XE line? The current second-hand prices and demand for the XE4, I believe, are grounds for a new iteration in the XE line. The initial price of the camera here in Germany at launch was about 900 euros for the camera body alone, but you are also able to buy it in a bundle with the new released 27mm f2.8 with weather resistance for about 1050 euros. Compared to today's prices, which obviously you can only buy used as this camera was discontinued, the best offers you will find in a new condition will be around 1200 euros for the camera body alone. But even with this price hike, there have been some complaints about this camera. In particular to previous versions, the XE1, 2 and 3, owners have complained about the deteriorating build quality coming from the XE2, and with the 3 and 4 the build quality apparently has gone down quite a bit. This has been a widespread complaint about a couple of Fujifilm's newer cameras, unfortunately. So one thing's for certain, this new generation of Fujifilm cameras coming out in 2024 will be a make it or break it deal for a lot of Fujifilm shooters in regards to build quality. That's why I'm hoping Fujifilm will step up its game in this category and come back around to its glory days in terms of build quality. Let's go into a couple of aspects I could see Fujifilm changing or keeping the same in this camera. Firstly, and as far as I know, this is a given in all of Fujifilm's newer cameras, is the X-Trans5 processor, just for a better handling and speed while using this camera. Secondly, on the topic of the sensor of this camera, this is something I'm somewhat torn on. So the XE4 had the 4th generation X-Trans sensor, so I would really like to see that improved. But the newly released XS20 is still using that same X-Trans4 sensor, even though the X-Trans5 sensor had already been released prior to the XS20's release. So my instinct would tell me that the same X-Trans4 26 megapixel sensor will be used on the XE5, just as it's been used on the XE4 and also the XS20. Thirdly, the viewfinder on the XE3 and the XE4 were basically the same, apart from a boost mode that the XE4 had available. Coming back to last year's XS20, which I would count as in the same category as the XE line, which also had the same EVF as the XE4. Though I haven't really heard any negatives or complaints about this viewfinder being used on any of these cameras, so it doesn't seem like it is something that Fujifilm needs to change, but obviously would be very welcome. Lastly, and I'm not sure if this is something that could be possible without increasing the size of a possible XE4, would be the bigger and newer battery that is being used on almost all of Fujifilm's newer cameras, which would be a great improvement to this camera. But I think it's very likely that a battery like this would increase the size of the camera, but maybe they can just go back to the design of the XE2 and XE3, because they actually had a small grip on the front of the camera, so maybe they could implement that to help the ergonomics and the battery life. Now, there are certain features that a lot of people wish for, but I can't see Fujifilm implementing them because they seem to be exclusive to Fujifilm's top-of-the-line camera bodies. Firstly, weather sealing would be a great addition, but it doesn't seem like Fujifilm wants to add this to their mid-range camera lines. Secondly, IBIS, just like the weather sealing, seems to be something that only the top-of-the-line cameras get, and in that case, if you want a rangefinder-style camera with IBIS, you should go to the xpro line. Now, I know that none of the xpro lines have featured IBIS yet, but as I mentioned in a previous video, the very likely arrival of the XPro 4 within the first months of 2024 will almost certainly feature in-body image stabilization. And lastly, multiple card slots doesn't seem to be something they do implement in their mid-tier of cameras. As for the possible release of this camera, I had a video a couple of weeks ago where I mentioned 4 cameras that I think will be released in the first months of 2024. I don't think the XE5 will be part of that, but I think this camera could be released within 2024. Likely towards the end of the year though. Now I quickly want to mention who I think this camera could be for. I think the XE line is a great way to enter into the Fujifilm X system, but that in no way means that I think it's an entry-level camera. There are a lot of people that honestly don't need anything more than the XE line has to offer. I would advise most people that want to enter the Fujifilm X system, that really like rangefinder style cameras, to start with an XE2 or XE3, which can be bought for around 500 to 600 euros used in a very good condition. This way you can build out your Fujifilm lens lineup, and if you should choose to do so, upgrade to a newer camera down the line. Either way, the XE line is great for people that want to learn how to shoot a camera manually. Being able to adjust your shutter speed on a dial on top of your camera, and also if you have a lens with an aperture ring, to adjust your aperture that way. Shooting this way can make you intentionally slow down the process of composing a shot, which in my opinion almost always leads to better thought out compositions. So just to mention this again, all of these points are my speculations and thoughts about the future of the XE line, so it's not set in stone that it will be released. It's just something that I'm very positive that it will be in the future. If you want to find out more about the XE line's bigger brother, the upcoming XPro 4, check out this video right here.